Why is it so hard for women to admit that we don't love our kids sometimes? And what does our karma and our family history have to do with our success and failure in parenting? What have we picked up from our own parents as children that is sabotaging our own capability now as adults to be parents? Hi, my name is RITU, and on this channel we talk about karma and relationships and fixing your relationships so you can have a better life. Today I'm joined by parenting expert and conscious parenting coach, Emily Hughes. Let's dive in. Hi, everybody. Today I have a special guest with us, Emily Hughes. Emily is a conscious parenting coach, somatic therapist, and mom of two. She works with parents who are struggling with anger, frustration, and disconnect to rise into inner trust so they can handle any parenting situation with calm, sturdy confidence. She works one-on-one with co-parents and with groups to help parents get intentional and consciously aware in their parenting. Welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I'm so grateful for you to be here with me as a fellow parent. I
Hmm.
feel that parenting has brought up all of my own childhood stuff, any attachment related glitches in my own
Yeah,
childhood, and they're manifesting in a magnified version on my children.
yeah.
So I've had the opportunity to talk about family dynamics, how we carry on traumas from childhood and from our past, and also from our family line into
Hmm.
the future. But I haven't yet had a one-to-one conversation with another parent, and especially a parenting expert. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I feel like parenting, the way I see it, is like infinite soup for personal growth because it's constantly offering so much fresh material every day to work with and, explore more deeply who we are as people. Really, that's kind of why I'm particularly drawn to it as a topic for self-exploration. And that's kind of what my whole life is about.
The topic for today is mothers who can't love. So, this is a
Mm,
topic that I've been talking about recently on my Instagram and on my YouTube channel, and it has gotten lots of mixed reaction. So, I've
mm,
received messages from total strangers that have been a bit aggressive, like, oh, what do
mm.
you mean? How dare you
Yeah.
criticize mothers? Do you believe that your mother should have loved you? Stuff like that. And I've also received questions and positive comments from friends saying, aha, this explains a lot about why I have certain negative cycles that I'm stuck in as an adult. Some of my friends
Mm,
have said this. And at the same time, it raises spiritual questions like, oh, okay, if we do put the blame or look to our mothers for some of the roots of some of our problems, aren't we like breaking the social rules or like religious rules or spiritual? We're not spiritual if we don't honor our
mm,
mothers and so on.
mm,
So this is a heated topic.
mm.
I want to ask you, what has been your experience with the whole idea of mothers who can't love?
This comes up, I work with mothers and fathers, but this seems to be a topic that comes up more acutely with mothers. And I think part of that might be, like you say, this sort of really kind of cultural expectation upon mothers. And I think what it can sometimes come up as is a real disconnection from the self. And we can go through our lives for many years functioning as a human being, being quite disconnected from ourselves. And then we have children, and children are so present in the fullness and wholeness of their beings, and they desperately want us to be present in the fullness and wholeness of our beings. And if we are not able to do that, then that can be absolutely terrifying for some mothers in particular, I think. And I think the way I kind of see this is from a safety perspective. I think a mother who is struggling to love, I think that the word that first came up when you asked me that question was safety. Does it feel safe for the mother to love? And I think some of this might be, you know, from beliefs that the mother has, which might be kind of, I think one of the really interesting beliefs that's come up in some of my client work is the belief that deep connection and intimacy is not safe. And when I say the word intimacy, often people kind of think like intimacy is like, you know, kind of sort of sexual intimacy. But I think that word intimacy is such a powerful one to think about in like the family relationship, like being intimately connected and being intimate in sort of belonging with each other in our family lives as well. And if that feels dangerous, if deep connection and intimacy feel dangerous, and why they might feel dangerous is, for example, if you've kind of been brought up in a household with narcissism, where like to be close to the parent might be dangerous because you might become enmeshed, or if love was dangerous, like if you were abused, or if there was kind of like a trauma bonding, or, you know, there's so many reasons why that deep connection might seem dangerous. And I think, so that safety piece, does it feel safe to love? Does it feel safe for like the flow between the mother and child to flow easily? And if it doesn't feel safe, that kind of probably makes sense once we start kind of unpicking the dynamics, you know, within how we were brought up and the relationship between us and our family. And I think something else that can come up is mothers believing that they are not nurturing. That can come up. And, you know, the thing sort of nurture and love, and like, if I'm not nurturing, what does that mean about me as a person? And I think this thing around like being a nurturing person, it's like if you've not been modeled nurture, it can be hard to show up with your own children in nurture. And you might argue that nurture is something innate, but I also think it's something learned through modeling. And if you have not experienced that, showing up in nurture, which I think, and because I think that nurture part, I think love and nurture, they kind of can't be separated in that mother-child dynamic. And if you're believing that you're not a nurturing person, it can be like a really hard thing to have that intimacy with the child and to have that flow of love between the mother and child. But I also think there's a great deal of hope. That's what I would say to anyone who is, you know, resonating with any of this. I think there's so much hope. If somebody is feeling like they are a mother who cannot love, like, I see a pathway of hope that when we reconnect to ourselves, when we find a sense of greater safety within ourselves, when we unpick the limiting beliefs and get to know the patterns that are holding us back, I see hope within that for anybody, but for mothers in particular.
A couple of things you mentioned here really ring true for me. For example, being disconnected with myself, and that automatically means you're just not present. So when my son was quite young, I was in this like non-present state, and he did anything and everything he could to bring me into presence, including getting hurt like really badly because I was just not there. I was actually in those moments desperately seeking that connection and that safety with my own mother, because certain accidents, the little kid in me was searching for that safety of her mother, you know, and I was still desperately searching, forgetting the fact that, wait a minute, I'm an adult now. I'm almost 40. My mother is no longer the provider of safety for me. As an adult, that responsibility is on me. It's not my responsibility to provide safety and nurturance to my children. A lot of what you said is connected completely. I've lived it, so I can totally relate. I recently admitted to myself that, whoa, I don't love my kids sometimes. And when I did that, I shared that with some people, my husband, and he's like, should you really be saying that? Like, is there something wrong with you? I realized from certain reactions from other people, there's such a taboo on women just to admit to ourselves that sometimes we don't love our kids and sometimes we actually hate them. That's when the shift happened. That's when the universe sent me certain books, coincidences happen, synchronicities happen that led me to realize that wait, it's unsafe for me to love for whatever reason. As a little kid, I shut down that whole love, that the safety to be intimate with a caregiver, because in my case, the caregiver was simply missing. Like my mom had to work a lot and so on. How can we make it okay for more women to just admit, sometimes I don't love, like sometimes I can't love my kids, because only when we see this truth, what you ended your last statement with, can we see the hope? Because as long as we're in denial, we're not going to seek the help. Once we admit that this is what's actually happening, we can see the hope. We can really embrace changes that's going to change it for us and our children.
Yeah. I see the word love and I see the word flow as being intimately connected, because I see love as being a flow, and a flow of connection, like deep connection between two people. In those moments when somebody's feeling like they don't love their kids, it's like, what is in the way? What is blocking the flow of love? A block has come in because the parent is so depleted that they're disconnecting, disassociating, and from that point, that flow is just not there because they're in a survival state. And I think another thing might be shame. Shame is paralyzing, and shame is a block to love, because when we're in shame, we're believing that we are unworthy of love and belonging. Shame often makes us want to shame others in order to deflect that shame away from ourselves. And if we are in shame and believing that we are unworthy of love and connection, it's incredibly hard to feel intimate connection and that flow of love in the family. Sitting with acknowledging shame, accepting shame, and then finding pathways through the shame, through solidarity and vulnerability, and addressing this taboo subject. That's why people find it so triggering, is because it triggers some people will avoid feelings of shame. And I think this is a triggering taboo topic, and I feel like it's deeply connected to shame. And I think that it's important to have these conversations, because if we're kind of avoiding things, then we're stuck in that shame space. It can be from that point of acceptance and vulnerability that we can move through and forwards into finding more connection and places that feel being better, essentially. And yeah, I think with that vulnerability, one of the things that came up for me when you were talking was this idea of like the mother hunger, and how if we have not been given the intimacy, the connection, the feeling of true belonging from our own parent, then admitting that like can be extremely vulnerable, and it's kind of easier to stay stuck in this sort of like disconnected space. The desire to be like, not the desire, the need for nurture. And I think one of the things within Western culture in particular is we are not nurtured through that first year of motherhood. If you felt this acute need for nurture, and maybe you weren't able to articulate that that's what it was, but if you felt, this kind of depth of like loneliness and shame and distress that so many mothers feel in that first year, I think that that can be a real block for many years to come, because it's this sort of hunger for what you didn't get, which is this nurture. And I think that can really have like a hangover effect for years and years to come. Yeah.
Yeah, that really sums up what I really wanted to ask you about. Know from you what resources you can, point us to, so we can learn more about the work you do, and maybe tell us as part of that how you integrate somatic and body work with your parenting work.
Yeah. So I think one of the things, how I integrate the somatic work is really like, I think we can talk and talk and talk, but sometimes the real truth comes in the felt sense. And I'll give you an example of this. So sometimes it comes up in sessions working with clients where we might go into some somatic stuff, and what I might do is, and I think this probably links a bit to what you do with constellating, but we might bring in one of your parents into the room, and then we observe somatically what happens in the body. And we can talk and talk and talk about our parents, but actually in the felt sense of like, if we imagine bringing our parent into the room, what's the physical reaction in your body? Is it of like love and warmth and like joy? Or is it of fear? Is it of shame? We can, through what happens in the body, like, is the body tensing when we bring the parent into the room, or is it open to joy and flow? One of the things that is so important, and why I bring the body in, is because it goes like this for the child. The child reports a sensation to the parent. If the parent is unable to or unwilling to link that sensation to a feeling and validate it, the child to disconnect from the body. The child is always going to choose the parent over the body, because the parent means life or death for the child. Right? That has happened to us as children, and it happened to most of us as children because our parents were not emotional space holders for us. We end up parenting from here upwards in our bodies. The truth can lie further down in what is happening, like in the tensing of our abdominal muscles, and like our endocrine system, and like cortisol and adrenaline running through our veins, and what's happening in our jaw. Are we ready to like pounce or flee? Our body is responding to a tiger, but it's not a tiger. It's a child with an underdeveloped brain, because children's brains don't develop fully until they're 25, because so many of us have had our needs chronically undermet as children. We struggle to see that our children cannot meet our needs. So much of anger, fear, and disconnection lie is we are looking in our children for our children to meet our needs, because our needs have been chronically unmet. And often we don't have the emotional maturity, most of us don't have the emotional maturity to be able to see that our children are unable to meet our needs, and nor should they be meeting our needs, because they are here to live their life through the truest pathway of who they are. And it's not their job to meet our needs, but it's really hard if your needs have been chronically unmet to be able to have the emotional maturity to see that that's not their role.
I had like 4 or 5 wow moments. I was literally going, wow. I was trying not to be loud so I don't break the flow of this video, but this is extremely eye-opening. Thank you, Emily. I'd like you to point us to your website, how we can contact you, and if there's anything you offer on your website that somebody could dive into right away and learn more. If you could tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'm at www.findingflowparenting.coach. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. And I've got a freebie on my website, which is From Yelling to Thriving. Yelling is the behavior at the top, but all of the other things underneath are all of the the things informing the behavior. And that's where we like to play in exploring those things so that we can understand ourselves more fully.
Thank you so much, Emily. I'll write out all the links that you just mentioned anywhere that this video is posted. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Great. Thank you so much.
Now we want to hear from you. Was there anything here that you resonated with that feels like this could be part of your story as a parent? You never know who you could be helping just by sharing your story. If you can think of somebody who would benefit from this content, please consider sharing it. And finally, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and check out my other content on thelifester.com. Make sure you sign up for my newsletter because I share content there that I don't share anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.